Good evening, and welcome to What's Your Story? I'm your host, James Ransom Reed Jr. My special guest tonight is Mr. Jeff Fletcher. Mr. Fletcher is the founder and CEO of the Ruby and Calvin Fletcher African American History Museum. The first two episodes gave you an insight into who he was, how he came to be, and the fabulous human being I think he is. This next episode, we're going to talk about his role as a law enforcement officer. How did that happen? How did that leave him? What impressions were left on him by being a law enforcement officer? In the final episode, we're going to talk about his museum and a very special piece of historical artifact that he came into possession of. You don't want to miss that. Jeff, welcome, buddy.
Welcome, James.
All right, now, let's get right to it.
All right.
You served as a police officer on what police force?
The city of New Haven.
City of New Haven.
And I was there for 22 years.
Wow.
And I served in the capacity of a patrolman, a 90-day detective in the robbery burglary unit, school resource officer. I was on the mounted horse patrol. So
You have to learn how to ride horses?
Well, coming from Colchester, we didn't have to learn that much.
There we go.
Right?
Okay.
The only thing was, we had to use a saddle.
Okay, yes. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Now, I think that there was some story behind your even getting on the force and becoming a police officer, or you were never a state trooper, right?
Nope, never state trooper, but when I realized that my prior years, I was working in the field of mental health.
Yes.
So I was working for the Department of Mental Health. And at that point, after 14 years, I said, you know what? I want to do something different.
Yes, yes.
Change the direction from what I went to school for. Now just seek to do something different.
Yes.
Plus the fact is, I took a year off because my mom had worked for Senator Chris Dodd in kind of a volunteer role in terms of recruiting and going out to get people to vote.
Yes.
So she was an integral part in working around a lot of his campaigning of doing things. And so for a year I took off in between jobs, and that's what I did. I was Senator Chris Dodd's eyes and ears in the city of New Haven as one of his legislative aides for New Haven, and did that for one of his campaigns. And at that point, I was dating who my wife is now. Mm-hmm. And
by the way, we didn't give her a shout out.
Oh,
you got to do that. You got to give her a shout out.
Barbara Russell.
Barbara, he just gave you a shout out. All right, go on.
And at that time, we were planning our wedding. And she had said, well, before we get married, you got to have a job. And so I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Basketball was done. Yeah. Mental health was done.
Yeah.
So now what do I really think I want to do? And it wasn't until that time I said, you know what, maybe law enforcement, because I knew folks that were in the field of law enforcement, whether it be Connecticut State Police, New Haven Police, or even a government law enforcement job.
Yep.
So the first thing I looked at was the Connecticut State Police. And I made application to the Connecticut State Police. And at that time, again, when I made application, I was unaware that there had been a consent decree that was placed out there where they were not hiring people of color, women. And there was
they being
the Connecticut State Police Department of Administrative Services.
Okay, all right.
And when I was making an application, I learned that I got rejected. And when I got rejected, I needed to know. Now, my family knew the commissioner at the time. And so I got at least a hearing with him, and he would look into, the rejection of why that was happening. On top of, there was an organization called the Men and Women of Justice within the state police who were state troopers, black and Hispanic and female. And I did not know that there was a consent decree, but nor did I know that there had been other applicants that were black and brown that were being rejected just openly. And so once we found out all the particulars of it, and the Department of Justice came in from out of Washington, interviewed a whole bunch of us, and turned that around so that the Connecticut State Police would know that the consent decree was violated and they need to get that up to speed. And they did. And at that point, I was told that I could reapply. And I was going to reapply until I met a captain for the city of New Haven. At that time, he was a lieutenant, and I can give him a shout out. That's Lieutenant Odell Cohens. And he was a pillar in the police department, but a force to be reckoned with. And he said, Fletcher, come to New Haven, we'll take you here. And so I made my application, and next thing I knew, I was in the academy, and I was being elected the leader of my academy class, which I didn't have any particular plans on staying that long. And I kept saying to my class, don't count on me. Don't look for me for anything, because I don't know how long I was going to be, because this was the last profession I thought I would ever go into. And 22 years later, I retired as a New Haven police officer.
What, was it rewarding to be a police officer?
Yes, it was. I came in contact with some great people, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, there was a few bumps in the road. Mm-hmm. Where I stood up on principle, and as I alluded to in the previous segment, that I had to file federal lawsuit because there was a racial reference directed in my attention, my face about my color, and I prevailed in that, and it was on principle. But the thing folks don't realize is that when we talk about that color of blue in all of us, it did not occur. It wasn't like I thought it would, folks would rally behind me. When you make a complaint like I made the complaint, people run the other way.
You're ostracized.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I did that on principle, because I didn't do it to get rich. I did it because it was principle. Matter of fact, I ended up paying more for the attorney out of pocket than what the suit I won, in terms of compensatory damages. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it was on principle, and that again comes back from my foundation of who raised me.
Started back as a little boy.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so so that the job, as we call it, is a good job, and just like society, the police department is a microcosm of its community. And just like in the community, there are bad eggs in the community as well as on these police departments.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you made a positive? You left a positive impression on the people you served?
Yeah, I mean, to this day, even as they come to the museum, there are folks that are still alive that come to the museum or will see me on the streets of Greater New Haven, and they will actually come up and say, "I know you. You're Fletcher." And I'll say, "Yeah, yes, I am." And they'll say, "I remember when you worked up in our district. I remember the things that you did." And I always try to, and I was taught this in the academy as well. And I had some good instructors at New Haven Police Academy. You treat people as if how you want to be treated, and respect, right?
It's so simple, isn't it?
It is. It's not that hard. I never feared for my life. I mean, there were days, there were nights I had some fear, but again, that goes along with the job,
yes,
right?
Yes.
But I think I made a pretty good impact on the community, because people have come up to me and said, back in the day, you were really cool, you were really nice, you treated us right, and I did. I mean, I just respected people. That's what the job is community policing. And I was at the forefront of when the community policing initiative took place.
Would you do it again?
I get that, Jim. You're asking a lot of questions here that are tough ones. Listen.
Yeah.
I think the time that we live in, it's just like when folks ask me if I had to do over to play basketball, what would I do different? I probably wouldn't do anything different, right?
Yeah.
Except gain a little bit more weight, right? Back then. But for law enforcement, I think I would have to scrutinize every little thing that I did and how I had to say it, but it wouldn't be a chore for me to do that. The body camera was just an extra part of the uniform that keep those people who are fearful of their own behavior from themselves, right? I don't think, as I was leaving the department, the body cam came in existence and everybody was upset about it. So I wasn't upset about the body cam because you just treat people like you want to be treated and everything else falls into line. But would I do it again? I probably would.
You probably would.
I probably would.
What was the people who were afraid or upset at the advent of the body camera? What was their central argument? Why? And here's why I asked that. It would seem to me that you want to protect yourself, from frivolous complaints and all that sort of stuff. And if you've got a body cam, it shows what you said, did, and did not do. So that's a valuable piece of evidence that protects you. Why wouldn't people want to do that?
Because it holds them accountable, right? Accountability is huge.
Okay.
And that was one of the things that, again, going back to the other segment, when I did not walk across the stage for my college graduation, my mom and dad held me accountable, not the University of New Haven.
Right.
They wanted the university to say, look, we understand he was young, he did this, he didn't take this serious.
He was a knucklehead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call me a knucklehead. But yes, it was.
Yeah.
And so we see your passion, your feelings of how this is important to you, but it will be important to him in the long run. So we're going to help accommodate to move that process so that he can achieve what it is that he's supposed to do and what you want him, where you want him to be. The accountability for law enforcement, I hold everybody accountable. And I think the camera holds everybody accountable to make sure that there's a checks and balances. But the camera, those who fear the camera are those who have been practicing a different form of law enforcement since day one when they graduated.
Which is not
put their
necessarily
hands up.
community friendly.
That's right.
Yes.
And they bring some of their own insecurities.
Right. And their biases right to the job with them.
Correct.
Exactly.
And so that's why they fear the camera, because their old habits may surface and they will be caught on the camera and therefore liability and possibly subject to losing your position or your job.
I've never understood why you couldn't understand that if you don't police yourself, you're going to force other people to police you. So I would get out in front of anything that would protect my troops in the field, first of all, and give us that sense that, yes, we know there's inequity in the world and in society. We know that. And here's why we're trying to correct it. When an officer is out there, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, yada, yada. What happened is right here on this camera. Mm-hmm. So you could say that happened, or you could say that, but here it is. Why on earth wouldn't you? But I hear you, it's accountability. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and again, like I said, it holds people accountable, but it also protects the officer.
Absolutely.
And it protects the citizen or the complainant.
Absolutely.
And the only time I got to use that camera in full effect was, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say this, after retirement, before the museum project, I was hired as a police officer at the Foxwoods Casino.
Okay.
Uniformed police officer, because I was sworn in and all of those other good things, and we had to use a body cam. And a lot of times, coming in contact with various folks that come in from all over the country, the world, that come there to take in the facility, the drinking, the gambling, and so forth. You had to be on alert. Very scary, not because I had to test what I would do or who I was, but for those folks that don't understand why there needs to be a police officer there and why when they act out, you have to go to the next level.
Be held accountable.
Exactly.
For acting out.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of times when I worked there for the 8 months that I did, that body camera was able to show my actions,
Absolutely.
how I handled
Protected you.
certain
Absolutely.
situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, were you a police officer? Did you do any undercover work? Because where I'm going with this is the last segment. We're going to talk about the museum, but you have a particular artifact that you went. Were you a police officer when you went undercover and got that artifact?
Yes, so I was part of what they call the Gangs and Guns Task Force. It was called Rocky, which was a Recover Our Cities and Our Children and Youth organization. And that was a joint combination, and I know I won't get in trouble now, but that was a joint task force made up of the Connecticut State Police and municipal police departments around the state. And they took 2 members from various police departments, especially our urban communities where there was a large insurgence of gun violence and gang violence. And we operated out on an off-site. And we also were able to go throughout the state of Connecticut wherever there were issues of guns and gangs. That's where we set up our operation. But when I belonged to this organization or this task force, we're able to see various elements of society in terms of vigilantes, drug dealers, gang members, people who are involved in hate groups and things of that nature. And so what I did was I took the liberty of using the system to weed out, so to speak, a vigilante or a person who belonged to a hate group, which was basically the Ku Klux Klan. And when I went online and put that I needed information and I needed a hood and a robe, somebody hit on it. And he happened to be a white minister from Boone, North Carolina, 83 years old, who was a long-standing Ku Klux Klan member. And so what I did was I befriended him for 6 months online. And
he had no idea of your identity.
No, because he couldn't see the URL because those things are encrypted.
All right, okay.
If you were to look, but trust me when I tell you, these weren't rocket science.
Right, they weren't rocket science. I got you.
Right, or computer technicians. So I befriended him for 6 months, but my undercover ruse was I was a white youth minister trying to embolden young white children into the Klan or to understand the history of the Klan. And that worked for as long as I needed. I mean, every day, every other week, because that's as much as I stayed in touch with them, I would hear all sorts of racial epithets. I would hear about all kinds of stories that were going on across the country, especially when an African American by last name of Johnson was drugged in Texas from the back of a truck and dismembered. How he was gleefully commenting on it, how it was another N-word that's no longer on the streets of this country, and a dead N-word is a good dead N-word, right? And so I had to hear that kind of rhetoric, and I knew why he was doing it, to see if I was who I said I was. And trust me, there were many times I wanted to expose myself and come out, but I didn't. I had to swallow it and say there's a bigger picture here. Because I needed that object to be able to move on, because my mom had passed away a couple of years before that, and I had decided how I was going to do this collection that she left me. So at the end of the 6 months, he sold me the uniform, the object, which happened to be a hood and robe, a cloak, a sash, and even pictures of himself wearing the object, and a flag, a Confederate flag. And when I got it, it was kind of like, whoa, this is really surreal here.
He shipped it to you?
Shipped it to me, But then what I did after I knew that he was shipping it, because he was still at the FedEx office where he lived and he was shipping it, I had told him after the agent had taken the package and was told not to give him the package back, because I had called down there because I had all his information and I had talked to him on the phone, and first time ever. And when he heard my voice, he said, "You sound like the N-word." Mm-hmm. And I said to him, "Well, are you sitting down?" And he said, "Yeah, why?" And I told him who I really was. And he blew a gasket. And I heard all these names being called at me, threw the phone down, picked it up, threatened me a few times, and that was the end of him. But again, the outfit was something that is one of the major parts of the museum, but also my presentations, because you can't speak of African American history without invoking the Ku Klux Klan, and you can't, just like you can't talk about the Holocaust unless you talk about Hitler and the Nazi regime.
Yep. It is an integral part of African American and American history.
Correct.
Right. How do you find your receptions when you go and talk about that and have that display there? What kind of reactions do you get?
Well, it's interesting that you ask me that, because as of today, you know, one of the things that normally happens, or sometimes if communities are not up to speed on African American history, or they're just now coming into the fold about the conversation,
yes.
They will tell me what they want me to bring, because there's enough information on me, YouTubes and various news segments throughout Connecticut of the museum as well as my presentations. And so they will ask me, what am I bringing? And will tell me not to bring that object, or they will want a whole list of a manifest of what I might be bringing.
Possible items that you have, yes.
Correct.
Yes.
And even down to the point where I'm kind of being told what to say and how they want me to say it. And some organizations have asked me to omit anything about slavery, the slave trade. The school today told me that they need to talk with this one or that one, even though they booked me 3 weeks ago to come to that school. So I think we have a lot to learn. I think a lot of places need to understand that we just can't pick and choose what part of African American history to talk about. It has some bad, ugly parts, but all of African American history is not bad. We do have celebratory moments and individuals who made history and made it so that you and I can be here.
Absolutely.
Doing what we're doing.
Absolutely. So you've gone to schools, colleges. What's your venue? Where do you go now? Any place you're invited, or is what?
Well, yeah. Well, tomorrow I'll be at the Hartford.
Okay.
In Hartford, the Hartford Insurance Company, and they are so gracious enough to invite me, and I'm excited about that because they want to know the history. They want to celebrate African American history, but I'll often tell folks, because everybody, you know, my phone is blowing up all the time.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Can we come, or can you come here?
I can imagine, yeah.
So I tell them, you know, even though this is leap year and we have 29 days in February, I tell them African American history, we celebrate 365 days of the year. And if you want to come in March, April, May, June, July, we're here, and I'll even come out. But when the school calendar starts, I'm available at the beginning of the school year all the way to the end. And so, you know, there's still a lot of work to do, James.
What's in that for you? What do you personally get out of that?
It's cathartic for me. It's very, very cathartic. It's very, very healing because of the path, the journey that I know of my grandparents, my mom, even myself. It's worth it, you know, to drive to one end of the state or to drive out of state and early morning and tired as all heck, and setting up and putting things together and then being able to turn on the light and go out there as you do when you do this program.
Yes.
You know, you turn the light on. Once the lights and cameras go on, you're on,
Yep.
right? And when it's done, you come down. That adrenaline drops.
Absolutely.
So it's exciting for me, but it's in the same terms, it's letting me know that I'm making a difference.
Okay. Stick around. One more episode.
All right.
Okay, we've got one more episode with Jeff Fletcher. In that episode, we're going to be talking about the museum that he founded. And you're going to learn some of the artifacts he has there. You're going to learn where the museum is and why it's there and why it is important. That's all the time we have for episode 3. I am your host, James Ransom Reed Jr. Everybody has a story. What is yours? Until next time, good night.
Nick Augustino right here at the East Side Restaurant. We always have the complete full dinner menu. Knockwurst, bratwurst, sauerbraten, potato pancakes, red cabbage, rice pudding, cream pies, all the desserts that Germany had to offer. I always do something different. Yes, I do. I brought seafood to the beer garden at the East Side Restaurant. East Side Restaurant, your German destination restaurant in Connecticut. Tiki-taka, tiki-taka, hoi, hoi, hoi!
I'm your host, Kurt Barwis. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Andrew Lin.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Veterans Corner. My name's Chuck Wooden.
Decision for ourselves for this week, if we want to be made well.
Hi, welcome to the crack of dawn. It's Dawn Lombardi. I'm starting the painting. It's going to be the cliffs with some water. Love it.
He took me on the sets of Lost in Space, Batman.
Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time,